We are going to get started. I'm going to share my screen and then we'll get started with the introductions and everything. So welcome everyone to today's presentation. We're going to be talking about resumes, specifically for student leaders and the experience that we have. So my name is Carolyn Meeker and I work in career and talent development, usually at the Biscayne Bay campus, but today zooming in from Boynton Beach. What I'd love to know, or I guess what I'd like to share before we get started is we really want this to be an interactive discussion. There's resume writing workshops that you can come to and we'll go over like step by step for parts of the resume, but we really want to make this something that you'll get what you need from it. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. If you're comfortable sharing your video or your audio, you can share your face, you can speak up. I have Ivy and Janine will be with me in the chat in case there is a question. Either they can answer or just interrupt me during a pause and say, hey, you have a question. So we really want this to be engaging, not just like me talking for 40 minutes. So we have an agenda. It's not going to be as laborious as this says right here. But again, I want to remind everyone that there is a link in the chat to a shared Google Drive folder. So if you're someone like me who you want the PowerPoint in front of you, you want to see some of the resources that I'll be talking about, it's all in there. You should be able to access the material. I have a PowerPoint presentation and 2 resumes that I was planning on showing today, but there's more resources in the Google Drive folder. So we want to talk about some of the common struggles. We'll go over learning outcomes. We'll have a short overview of our office. Then we're going to look at a resume. Then we're going to talk about some different parts of resumes. And these were suggested, like Carolyn, don't just do a resume writing workshop. Really, can you spend some time on like the objective versus profile, accomplishment statements, and then how do you put leadership experience on resumes? And then the applicant tracking systems is something that I think you can't, if anytime you're talking about resumes, you need to talk about the applicant tracking systems. And then we'll spend some time talking about competencies. We were going to review Jessica's a specific resume. We can still do that. I have Jessica's permission to review it, but if someone else wants to review your resume or talk about something else instead, we can certainly do that. So again, the Google Drive folder, everyone should have access to it. And you're going to see, I think in addition to that PowerPoint that I'm using right now, you'll also see 2 sample resumes. And then if you look at resources, you'll have some different documents that we probably won't look at unless someone asks a specific question. And then there will be 4 additional resumes in the sample resume subfolder. So let's see. Okay, so just in case anyone came here late, I'm going to put the link to that Google Drive folder in the chat again. So what I want to know right now, whether you put it in the chat or you're going to unmute yourself, what are you struggling with when it comes to writing your resume? And what do you want to talk about today? Is anyone brave? You want to unmute yourself? Put it in the chat. Okay, so someone said how to describe very important positions. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that or involvement. I would say we can definitely talk about that. I think one of the hard things that some students come and what they have a difficulty time with is they're like, I feel like I really don't have much experience. How do I put that on my resume? And so we talk about projects. So like if we never worked, how do we make our resume shine? Accomplishments. Okay. So Yeah, we can talk about all of that, and we can take, if someone has a specific example as I'm going through this, if someone has a specific example or question you want to ask, please don't feel like you need to keep it till the end, unless it's really specific about you and it's going to require like a one-on-one conversation. So accomplishments, how to organize the information onto a page. Yeah, that one page thing can be tough. What not to include that some might think to include. Okay. How to find the right words to sell yourself. Awesome. Okay. So those are a lot of specific things to talk about. If I don't get a chance to touch on each one as we go through, please bring it up at the end. Also, if anyone has examples, if you know of a resource or if you've seen something on a resume that you're like, oh, this was really cool. I wish I had known that ahead of time earlier, or, I wish that everyone knew about it. Please feel free to speak up and share that. So some of the things that I want to make sure that you're able to do when we leave here today is locate where events are in Handshake, describe the difference between a resume objective and a summary of qualifications, identify at least 2 places on your resume where you can add leadership experience, and then we're going to spend some time on accomplishment statements. So I might skip through some of the slides pretty quickly because I really want to spend some time on those things that you already mentioned. So just kind of an overview of our office. So I work in career and talent development, which I'll say is a central career office at FIU. So we do a lot of these things on the left, right? We have career assessments, exploration. We have a drop-in program, which I'll list the hours in a bit. We have one-on-one appointments that you can request. We have obviously workshops. There's a lot of handouts and resources. We have job posting system, Shake, and that's where you can request the one-on-one appointments. We have internship fairs, job fairs, grad school fair. So Handshake is a big thing, but I want to make sure that you all know, actually, if you don't mind putting in the chat or raising your hand or something, do we have any College of Business or Hospitality Tourism Management students here? Or if you know people who are in College of Business or Chaplain, please note that you have your own career office as well. So in addition to what my office will offer, you can go to your career service as well. And if you have a class assignment that requires you to go to your career center, make sure that you're going to the correct one, because there are plenty of chaplain and business professors that want their students to go specifically to your career coaches. So they may not accept like a resume review from me. Okay. And then all of us use Handshake, except for College of Law. They use a different job posting system. But College of Business, Chaplain, our office, we all use Handshake. That's where you can request appointments. You can see jobs posted, a lot, and other events. So these are just a couple of the things that our office offers. So we have the virtual career fair, technical career fair coming up February 17th, and the all majors on the 24th, which is a week later. We have something called Panther Shadows where you can shadow, like right now it's virtual. So it's like a 2-hour shadowing experience, different employers. And so even though we don't have a spring break, those dates would be April 26th through 29th of 2021. So I'm not going to spend that much time going over all the details. Just note we have a lot of workshops for folks who are in CASE. We have Green School Engineering. Know that you also have some events that are targeted for you. So these events are open to any major, but they're going to be targeted towards, say, computer science, so you think you can code, right? That will be an example of something that, me as an education major probably wouldn't want to go to. So our virtual drop-in hours for our office, Tuesdays 10 to 12, Thursdays 3 to 5, the first Wednesday of the month from 5 to 7. And those times are all Eastern Standard Time, so Miami time. Here's what Handshake will look like. You can see jobs, employers, you can go to the Career Center that's circled right here in red, and then go to appointments. And that's where you can request an appointment. So we're going to look at a sample resume right now before we get to, and I'll let you know, it's actually it's in the shared Google Drive folder. It's actually not in the subfolder called resume samples. It's as soon as you go to that folder, it should be one of the 3 documents that you'll see. And we're going to look at the chemistry one. So resume sample CHE. Before we get going, before I start showing that, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so I don't see any questions. So this is what I want to, we're going to spend, a few minutes on. Please let me know if you're not able to see this. But again, if you want to have it, open it up on your own computer. It's in the Google Drive. So I have some comments on here as we go through this, some things that you may want to do, some things that you may not want to do. So as an example, chemistry major, right? That might be Carolyn Meeker. And right now I have my gender pronouns, which might be helpful or it might hinder you depending on the employer that you're interested in. So some of the highlights, when you look up the summary of qualifications, highlights, this next part, oh, you know what, I forgot this. One of the things that's going to be really important, and sometimes people forget about this, is you do not want to put your full address, your phone number, your email, all that information on your resume if it's going to be publicly posted. Like if you have your resume on Wix, profile, or LinkedIn, or you're sharing it for, a class presentation, like you don't want all that content out there where anyone can, find out. So think about your privacy and, maintaining your security. So coming down to your highlights or different parts of your resume, you think about the terms that you use, the phrases, the skills, the characteristics that define you, that represent you best, as a potential employee or grad student. And so this is often the part where people will kind of target, tailor. So for example, dynamic, strategic, results-oriented individual with demonstrated success with teamwork, customer service, multitasking, something like that, right? You don't want to just be like you're throwing a whole like thesaurus of all these adjectives. You want it to be authentic and meaningful. Don't just give me the impression that you're throwing words on there because you think I'd like them. So here's an example of, highlights: hardworking chemistry major with lab testing experience, in-depth knowledge of wet chemistry and titration methods. And so you can see some of the different things that this person has put in here. One of the things that that people don't realize is that you can have things that you're learning, right? So you can say proficient in A, B, and C, but learning SPSS. Right? So native fluency, English, Spanish, able to read, translate, create bilingual documents. So you're giving like more than just I'm fluent, but look at the things that I can do, and then learning Japanese. And so you can kind of look at this as either like, a like the summary of a book, the backside of a book to see what's this all about, or like a table of contents. It's kind of like, if I only spend a couple seconds on your resume, what do you want me to know? And this is it, right? And then the rest of your resume is where you're showing me, where did you gain that skill? Give me an example of when you use that software. So if you only speak English, no, do not put that on your resume. You don't do anything. I see a lot of people who say like bilingual and Spanish. And so they'll only put Spanish down because their resume is in English. I get it. It makes sense. It's a pet peeve of mine because I'm like, the bi means two. So I'm like, well, Spanish, and then I'll assume English. But but yeah, if you're learning Spanish or conversational, Creole or something like that, you can put that on there. But no, if it's just one language and that's all you want people to know about, then don't even mention it, because we'll assume that it's the language that your resume is written in. Thank you for asking. So then you're going to have an education section. This is one of the things that I see pretty often that people will make mistakes on, right? So either they're bolding FIU, but not the degree. And so I'm like, okay, so what's more important? If you're applying for a job at FIU, then maybe you bold it. But if you're applying for a job that maybe it doesn't so much matter if FIU was your school, then you should be bolding the actual degree. I also see a lot of people who will leave off the degree and only put the major. And so if it doesn't say Bachelor of Science, then I need to guess, is it a bachelor's or a master's? I'll assume that it's a bachelor's, but you're making me guess and you're already making me work and I haven't even called you in for an interview. And then over here as well, some people will tell me that 2020 to present. That's not really helpful. What I want to know is when you expect to graduate. So the EGD is expected graduation date, and this person, I should update that. That's August 2020. Now, if it's in the past, I don't really care what month you graduated in. But so then for the education, you can also put certifications. If anyone has any city training, you can put that down. If you have social justice badge or any other badging programs that you've completed, you can put here as well. So then you come in and you can have some work experience and you want to think about what's important. We'll spend more time on accomplishment statements, but I just want to give you kind of an overview, right? So you have some lab experience and then you have the month and year to, you have the dates. Then this person has other work experience. They're an LA learning assistant. They're a tutor. At one point, they were a medical scribe. And then so you come on down, and so you can think, you here and elsewhere, think about, do you have any data? Do you have any results? Can you prove that the students you tutored increased their, or that you helped teach, did your work help them increase their scores? Right? How many students did you have in study groups if you helped create study groups? And so one of the things also is you want to be able to, you don't need to be, you do want to be careful with your resume. Think about, I think it was General Electric, GE once said that anything you do, think about your resume as a legal document. Anything you do and say on your resume may be held against you like during the interview. So it's okay to say that you adapt your communication to meet students' learning styles, visual, auditory. That's great. Awesome. That's what we want in people who are like teaching. But if I interview you, you better be able to give me an example of how you would adapt for someone. And how would you adapt if you had, 4 students in a tutoring session and they had different communication styles or different learning styles? Okay, so question about high school. No. Well, if you are, so maybe like a freshman or a sophomore in college, then yeah, you can keep your high school on there. But by the time you're a junior, senior, unless you did some really cool stuff in high school, we don't care what you did in high school anymore. Like, I don't care if you did, well, I care, but I'm not going to believe that you really care about like community service because you did it in high school, unless you're also doing it in college. Because if I only see it in high school, then I'm going to assume you only did it because maybe it was part of your graduation requirement. So usually if you got like a technical diploma or any kind of vocational training while in high school, or you really had some, like outstanding academic achievements, you can leave that in there. But for the most part, we don't care about high school. Just like I have 4 degrees, I have an associate's degree, and on my 2-page resume, it doesn't even list the associate's degree because it doesn't add anything that my bachelor's degree doesn't already like say, say about me. So I think the last thing before we go back to the PowerPoint and I ask if you have any questions is think about, you can explain, if you got recognition, if you received awards, if you were elected for a position. So these right here, service and affiliations, a lot of people will call this like volunteer. So volunteer is fine, but you can, if service is a term used more often than volunteer, then use service. You can also call it leadership. Even if you weren't in a leadership role, being involved in a student organization is still being a leader. So this person had, a member of American Chemical Society at FIU, but they didn't add any bullets. Member Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. Here, they were pretty involved and they talked about some of the things that they did. So you can take your leadership experiences and format them, think about them as a job, and how would you tell me the skills that you use and what you did. Now, I put this in here. So you want to think about what is important to you to let employers know. So just like I put the gender pronouns at the top to let someone know, look, I really care about LGBT inclusion. Pronouns is something that, is important to me. Some employers will really like that, and some will be like, I don't want anything to do with that. It's not professional. It doesn't go on your resume, right? So similar to if you participated in anti-racism activities, know that there's going to be some people who will have for different reasons thoughts about anti-racism, right? And then Black Lives Matter. So that might have an impact on the person receiving it that you have no idea. Anyhow, so does anyone have any questions about this before we go back to the PowerPoint?
Yes, I do. You have some percentages there, I think, when you scroll down a little. And you have, for example, right there, increased physicians' daily productivity by 20%. How do you calculate that without being fraudulent?
So,
or
and
or today also, if you're affiliated with groups, a lot of things are being done virtually, and there aren't these opportunities to actually be able, a lot of them are not doing drives, they're not going to places because the danger of getting COVID is real. And, so you're going to lack that kind of information to include.
Mhm,
How do you
absolutely.
bolster it?
So great question. Sometimes you can't, especially when I talk to tutors. I'm like, do you know, like for the people that you tutor, do you have statistics? And they're like, well, yeah, you know what, the office keeps that, so I can go and ask. You might not know. It might be anecdotal. You may know if someone told you, but really it comes back to, where is that data? Is it available? If you don't have that, like, hey, like, the average student increased, when they did they went from like a C minus to a B plus, in part based on the tutoring that they received. You might not even know, like, what can you attribute that to, because maybe they went to office hours and other things. But if you have the data, show it. If not, you can talk about how many students did you tutor? Was it in groups? Was it individual? Maybe you tutored in English and some people you tutored in Spanish, so there might be other things. I would say for like the events like today, if you're involved with, Panther Power, SGA, Bayview, you can talk about providing workshops for, however many members are in your group. You could talk about providing workshops if you do something specifically like at BBC for, well, I don't know how many students are here now, but for, a campus of like 4,000 students. So you can do some of that stuff. But one of the big things I would say for everyone here is start tracking or start like paying attention to, how am I going to document the results? Right. And so if I don't know, Ivy maybe, or whether it's Colette or whoever, might be able to go in and see how many people attended this event. So you can pull up, maybe you helped coordinate 4 events and 200 people came to them. I'm trying to think of like when I was, let's see, a resident director. I could talk about how many RAs I worked with, how many programs they did, how much attendance they had, but I can also put in, if any of the RAs or the students maybe like nominated a program for like a Res Hollis Award or something like that. So it's not always about numbers, but as much as possible, try to. I know that was a long answer. Um,
And
but
do
did
you
that
guys have, yeah, and do you have like resources or guidelines for how to start tracking and how to start, like quantifying this information?
We have some stuff about, when we look at the accomplishment statements, we can give a couple of examples of how you might word it, but I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything that's like, okay, here's what you do to start tracking them. I would say one of the best pieces of advice that I got from a supervisor was to keep a kudos to Carolyn like email folder. So if I would get a hey, like good job on that program, Carolyn, it was really great, or a student or a faculty or someone's like, hey, I really appreciated this, or you helped me do a mock interview and then I was offered the job. Like you can start keeping those things in an email folder so that when it's a performance appraisal or when you start thinking about how do I put things on my resume, you can go back and find that. One of the things, let me actually show you another. I'm going to stop sharing real quick because I'm going to go into another Word document and I'll show you some things that you can do. And while I'm looking for this other resume example, I will say that there was a question in there about should you put your GPA on if it's 3.4? Yes, I would say usually the rule that or the standard that we go by is if it's a 3.0 or higher, put it on your resume. Now, one of the problems with resumes is that they can be subjective, right? So there's two employers. General Electric is like, um, you need to put your GPA on your resume, but unfortunately, if it's below a 3.0, we're not going to call you for an interview. Well, that sucks. So someone's like, well, what if I have a 2.8 and I don't put it on on my resume? Well, if it's not on your resume, we assume it's not a 3.0, so we won't call you. Where another organization's like, well, don't put it on your resume because if it's a 2.8, we're not going to call you because you need at least a 3.0. But if you don't list it on your resume and your resume shows you as a strong candidate, we might call you in and then at least you'll get a chance to talk to us. So, well, 3.4, yes, put it on your resume. So I'm going to come back to the presentation, share my screen, and I'll show you a couple of examples of some things that you can do. So for the current job that I have now, these weren't awards, but I wanted to let people know, look, these are some of the committees that I'm involved in, and a lot of them are partnerships and diversity. You can also put things in such as nominations, recognitions. So like in 2011, I received the Air Force Recruiting Salute, right? And in 2008, this is something that I didn't do. Well, I participated in alternative spring break, but it was coordinated by my RA. And then I put a link to a news article from the campus paper. So let's see. We have another question. Okay. Yes, you're welcome. That was a long answer about the GPA as well. So does anyone else have any questions before we start going into some of the resume specific parts? Okay, so I will say some of you may have seen Jamie Casap talk at FIU, I think 2 years ago. He was at the FIU education IT event. So one of the things that Jamie has said is that, we used to ask people, what do you want to be when you grow up? Which is like not necessarily the best question anymore. Instead, ask what problems do you want to solve? So your resume is really looking at all the things that you've done that someone would pay you for, right? And so you can you can think about internship, service, leadership, volunteer, part-time jobs, international experience. And all of those might be experiences that helped you gain skills, right? And so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. First, though, I think the applicant tracking system is something that I really want to make sure that you're all familiar with. So this is one of the reasons why we say, please don't use a resume template. If you do, make it something that's simple, because especially if you're applying, you upload your resume, you're applying for a job and a company has a lot of applicants, right? Like it's a company a lot of people want to work for. Very likely there's software that's looking at your resume before a person will will look at it. In fact, a lot of resumes no one is ever going to see, because think about it like you're writing a research article or a research paper, and you need to go into the library database and do a search for, like, maybe you need 4 journal articles, right, for your references or your bibliography. So you're going to put in your search terms. Maybe you only want things that have been posted since 2010. You want it to be English. It has to be in scholarly journal articles. And so you put in all those parameters. Your resume is like a journal article. Employers are going to put in, these are the things that I'm looking for. Maybe I want someone who speaks Spanish. Maybe I want someone who has some kind of degree in education. And who's graduating, I don't know, within the last 2 years or next year. And so based on that requirement, the criteria that they're putting in, that's when your resumes will get sent to someone. And so that's why a lot of people, you want to be really careful about how you're formatting your resume. So companies receive a lot, and usually, so 75% of resumes don't get seen by the human eye, right? And so some of the reasons why your resume wouldn't get past this applicant tracking systems, like you might have some information in a header or a footer, and that information might not be like available for the software. Sometimes the templates are what keeps the information. So if you have graphics, charts, sometimes tables, which make things really neat, some of the software will not read any of that data that's inside, and it really sucks. So you might have a really great visually appealing resume. So one of the things we tell people, if you're going to a career fair and you really like a nice creative resume, bring both. Bring the creative one and then bring the more traditional one. Then if you don't have the keywords from the job description, and then you want to make sure that usually you're uploading it as a PDF or a Word document. Make sure that the file type is one that they accept. So that's the applicant tracking system. So we're going to talk briefly about resume objective versus profile versus summary of qualification. Um, does anyone does anyone have anything you want to share about objectives, profiles, or summary of qualifications? Does anyone really like one or the other? Okay, I would say that I was co-presenting with an employer one time, and they were like super candid. They're like, you know what? Don't use an objective because objectives suck. Well, a well-written objective is not bad. The problem is that usually objectives aren't well written. So it can be an objective can be really helpful if you're looking for like a specific position and you're gonna just let like the HR person know, look, this is what I'm looking for, right? Applying for assistant director position at Florida International University Biscayne Bay campus, where I can work with, you know, I don't know, people from, and you can list the different colleges, or undergrad students or something like that. A profile tends to be longer. It's like the shortened version of a cover letter. So it's a brief summary of skills, experiences, goals, maybe goals as it relate to a specific job opening or type of job. Whereas a summary of qualification is longer, usually like, 3 to 6 bullet points. And they can be about specific skills. They can be qualities, attributes that you have, whatever you think the employer is really going to be find of value. So you can see some examples, right? So of an objective, experienced English teacher seeking a position at an independent secondary school versus English teacher with 10 years experience in independent school system, success developing creative teaching strategies to achieve passing grade levels on statewide exams. And then you have a longer summary of qualifications, which includes an award, talks about years of experience and stuff like that. Has some softwares listed there. Now, a lot of people will do the profile. And so we're not going to go through all of these, but here are some more examples of resume profiles. And you can find this on one of the documents in the Google Drive. In fact, let me go back, sorry, to the chat and share. For folks who have joined us later, there is a shared Google Drive folder that has the PowerPoint that we're using right now and some other resources. And so you can see some of these. Some of them are for people who have more experience. Some are more for college level, such as like detail-oriented English major with journalism experience, managing editor of college paper with strong leadership skills, particularly assignment delegation, maintenance of deadlines, well-versed in proofreading, and APA. So no, that wouldn't, well, it would be a section of your resume. It's usually going to be, you have your heading and then an objective, profile, or summary of qualifications. It's usually like the first thing after all your contact information. And so when we go back to the resume, the next resume example that we look at, I'll walk you through that. So actually I can show you right now if you want. Let's see, going back to, I think, the chemistry example, you have the name, right, the contact information, and then you have the highlights. Whereas if someone just had a profile, it might be this first line: hardworking chemistry major with lab testing experience, in-depth knowledge of wet chemistry and titration methods, experience using blah, 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 right? That thing could just be a profile. So, and then that's what you can change. It can be hardworking chemistry major. It could be bilingual chemistry major. You can change this up to make it fit your needs. And so instead of highlights, you would reformat it and you would call it like a profile. So I hope that made sense. So going into accomplishment statements, we're just going to, yep, you're welcome. Just have a couple of examples. So here's this really brief, right? So someone who's a student leader, if they want to talk about increased participation, like helped grow membership from 175 to 249 in 1 year through targeted communication to faculty advisors and active involvement in community events. I don't know. That's just an example, right? Now, one of the things that you think about is we'll spend more time on this and, over the next few minutes, but is it helped grow membership or did you grow membership? Because you could say grew membership. Now, do you want to focus on this is what I did or I helped our group to do this? And that's more of it's a stylistic thing. Let's see. And so here's an example of sometimes when we have parts to, like bullet points that we can make a little bit better, like followed up with customers. Instead, you could say initiated discussion of new product during routine follow-up calls with customers, resulting in 20 additional sales per month. Now, for me, I'm like, why are you starting with the initiated discussion? For me, I prefer the example in blue. So increased monthly sales by 12% by initiating discussion. So there's one example. Now, when you get down to it, this was adapted from ASU, Arizona State University. They had how to write an accomplishment statements. And I think, Katya, I think you had asked maybe about numbers or percentages. So if you have any ideas based on this, please let me know, or if you have a question. But here's kind of like a formula, right? You have the action verb plus the task or the project plus the results equals the accomplishment statement. Now I have
That's pretty good, like a way to actually start to quantify, intangible information.
Yeah, because it's like, how do you do that? Now, it's not necessarily how do you document it. That's a different conversation, but this can help you think, okay, so if this is the kind of data I want to collect, how do we go and track that? And that's like an internal within your department, conversation to have. And hopefully if you're being supervised by someone who has that information, hopefully they're able to give you that data for, hey, so, it's the end of the semester, the end of the year, let's look at your resume. So we'll take one example, say the first one. So this person wanted to use two verbs, right? Reorganized and maintained. And then the project, they were working on technical files, right? Like maybe a big old storage mess. And the results were that they reduced the time it took to search for files by 3 hours per week. So your accomplishment statement can be reorganized and maintained 600 technical files, reducing file search time by 3 hours per week. Now, for me, I looked at that and I'm like, "Ah, what do I think is more valuable for this company that I'm applying for? Is it that I reorganized and maintained, or is it that I reduced the time it took to do something?" So you're saying the same thing, but you can change, like think about linguistics. You can change, move things around. So reduced file search time by 3 hours per week by reorganizing and maintaining 600 technical files. Okay, so my grammar wasn't very well. I have to go and change some verbs there. But here's an example of some of the things you can do. Anyone, like if you work for, like if you did helped with like or not dance revolution. Oh gosh, Rorathon. Or any of the some of the fundraisers that we do, you can raise or you help to raise, like our students raise a lot of money. And so why wouldn't you put that on there as something you contributed to, right? And then you want to think about, like, look at the second example. So organized a company sponsored bikeathon raising 700,000 for AHA with 100 employees participating. Well, so you want to, this person's focused on the organizing an event, right? Now, for me, I'm like, why wouldn't I start with raise 700,000 and then what you did and how you did it? So here's an example of how you can use how you can kind of think, take your statements and make them a little bit stronger. And you can't do this for everything, right? Sometimes I answered the phones and I can tell you how many people, like I answered a phone in an office of, I don't know how many people. You can add some numbers, but sometimes you didn't really do anything that's super impressive. So when you think about leadership experience on your resumes, you can think about listing the skills. Like what skills do you have that you want to highlight, right? And then what specific roles or projects or interactions do you want to include on your resume? Decide where and how to list them on your resume, and then consider adding a link to your online portfolio. If you have an online portfolio, you can add a link to it. Like I linked to a couple of journal article or uh, university newsletters. I think I had one for when Jaylon and I were written up as members of the LGBT mentoring program at FIU. And then I had a link to an article for I participated in AB that my RA led. Um, so you can add those things to your resume. Um, you can have leadership positions, service, mentoring. It can go under your experience section, right? Each thing can be its own, like kind of treat it like a job. It can be under your education section. So you could talk about research projects, your senior project or capstone. Um, you can have a leadership or a service section that lists all the things that, like a few of them. And so when you do add, whether it's projects, leadership roles, but this is particularly about like academic or like community organization projects, right? So you want to be detailed, like what's the name, what was the purpose of the project? If it's not very clear from the title, how long was it? How many people did you work with or did you serve? Was there any money that you raised? Did you oversee a budget of a certain amount of money? So what value did the project involve? If you had a leadership role, you can put that. So you want to be short enough, like provide the information, but short enough that it doesn't look like a paragraph. For your resume in general, be consistent. Like you should be using no more than like 2, maybe 3 font styles, and that includes bolding, caps. I wouldn't use italics. Think about people like me who are older and we have a hard time reading. Try to make some really like regular font styles, and then be intentional in the words that you use. So here's a couple of examples, and I think soon we'll go into the other sample resume that I wanted to take a look at. Right, so you can see, let's see, for information technology experience, access database development project, right? So introduction to information technology, that was an academic project that someone is talking about. They took it in a class. Here's someone who was a marketing intern. And so you format these like they're jobs. I mean, you don't want to say like, professional work experience. You want to make it clear what it was. So the last thing that we will talk about is there are lots of competencies. The National Association of Colleges and Employers talks about 8, right? Critical thinking, problem solving, professionalism, work ethic, communication, digital technology, leadership, teamwork, collaboration, global intercultural fluency, and then career management. So we're not going to go over all these, but I think I'm going to take a look at critical thinking, problem solving, and then leadership. So when you think about critical thinking, problem solving, the definition that NACE came up with was exercising sound reasoning to analyze issues, make decisions, and overcome problems. So the individual is able to interpret or to obtain, interpret, and use knowledge, facts, and data, and may demonstrate originality and inventiveness. So you, kind of in a nutshell, I find solutions. So can anyone give an example of when you use critical thinking or problem solving?
I'm an advertising major, so usually clients come to us with problems of stuff they can't, or skills they don't have for advertising. So we pretty much solve their problems of getting the product to the consumer.
Okay, awesome. Excellent. Can you, and you may not be able to do this right now because, I'm putting you on the spot, but can you give an example of like what skill might you do while you're helping to solve their problem?
Um, like skill, do you mean like use Photoshop to make a new logo, like for their new market?
Absolutely. Sure. And a part of it might be maybe a part of your problem solving is if you do any market research, if you're like, okay, who's your target audience? And then trying to figure out, well, maybe your message isn't appropriate for that audience.
Mhm.
Right. So you're really like taking knowledge that's out there or doing a little bit maybe of investigating. And then maybe you realize, you know what, no one uses that software anymore. It's kind of, passe. And so you come up, you're like, why don't we do this instead? So for sure. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have an example? Because I would say, like, I'll give an example, maybe something that I've seen is, or I've done. So in my office, this is quite a while ago, we had a lot of people who, like, we just weren't reaching out to people who couldn't come to campus. And so there are 2 things. One is I think about 2 years ago is when I started using Zoom. We tried using, I think, Adobe Connect before that, but I'm like, what? Like, phone isn't good enough if people want to see each other. Why aren't we using some kind of video conferencing? We do it outside of our office. Why doesn't our office do it? So I started using Adobe Connect, and then I started using Zoom, and now everyone's using Zoom because of the pandemic, but also for document reviews. Like, I found out about track changes, which is an editing and partnering collaboration tool in Microsoft Word. And now when I meet with students and we're going back and forth on resume updates or cover letters, I'm like, okay, we're going to go back and forth using track changes. And so kind of identifying that, hey, there's a way we can do something better. And so that would be, you can talk about that. I think going to leadership, does anyone have an example of something in leadership that you have put on your resume? I mean, you can use leadership in general, but here's the definition that NACE gives, right? The ability to leverage the strengths of other people to achieve goals. Using interpersonal skills to coach and develop others. Being able to assess and manage your own emotions and those of others, using empathetic skills to guide and motivate and organize, prioritize, and delegate work. So it's pretty much like I recognize and utilize the strengths of others for team success. Does anyone have an example of when you have used interpersonal skills to either coach or guide success? Okay, I can give an example of a cover letter for a job that I applied for a while ago, and I got two interview. I went for the second interview. They brought me onto campus, and one of the things that I put in the cover letter was I talked about my experience as like a career advisor, career coach, right? So this is, I have like, so many 6 years experience doing A, B, and C. One of the things that attracted me to this position, the one I was applying for, is the ability to take that experience and help other career advisors like develop. And so I would be supervising people who have done what I did so well. And so I was really talking about my ability to do a good job, and then using my skills to help other people learn how to do a good job. So it wasn't necessarily worded that way on my resume. That was more about the interview itself. So the last thing I wanted to do was to look at actually Jessica's resume. She volunteered for us to share this, unless anyone else wants to look at your resume. Or does anyone have a question? Does anyone want to share anything right now before we just spend a few minutes on this? I think we have 5 minutes left.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Martha, right?
Hi.
Hello.
I guess my question would be if you really don't have any work experience, how would you be able to put that into your resume to actually make it look good?
Okay. So if you don't have work experience, some of the things that we'll look at might be, let me see, like you can think about academic projects that you've done, right? Class projects, student organizations. Let me see if this one has any examples. If you've been involved in service, so this was a chemistry major, right? So you can, if you take out any of the memberships, if you were on the swim team, like I was a swimmer growing up, you can talk about whether it's helping other people get better, being a part of a team. You can also talk about I would say, are you involved in any organizations even if you aren't a leader?
Right now, no.
Okay, so I know that I'm putting you on the spot, but what would you put on your resume? Can you think of any class papers or team projects that you've been on that you can talk about?
I probably would put like group projects maybe.
Okay, so you can look at group projects. One of the things, one of the things, I don't want to say like you're not going to, get any jobs or anything like that, but one of the things I really want to stress is don't seek opportunities, whether it's class projects, maybe it's volunteering in a research lab or, it's kind of, things are kind of hard right now. Find a micro internship, like a short-term project that you can work on virtually. And we have those through Handshake. You can look up micro internships, because just getting a degree is not going to get you the job. Like it's the degree, but also, okay, what kind of involvements do you have? So if you attend events, whether in your community, if you're a member, if you live in, I don't know, Lakeview or Bayview or anything like that, if you attend events, if you help your RA put on programs, all of those things you can list as projects. Tell people that like if you plan a family reunion, think about all the skills that you use for a family reunion. So if you help or volunteer, even in a church or something like that, you really want to start thinking about all the things that you do. And if you have any questions or you need help, please request an appointment with me or one of my colleagues through Handshake. Because we have, one of the things that I see pretty regularly is someone's like, well, I don't know what to put on my resume. Like, I don't have any experience related to my major. I've just been like a bartender for 4 years. And I'm like, what? Let's sit down and talk about the skills that you probably use as a bartender or as a server or a busser. So a lot of times we have a hard time kind of valuing the experiences that we have, even though they really, when we think about it, we probably do use skills. So if you were a small business owner for the past 15 years, I would definitely say that that's more than worthy of a one-on-one conversation. But I would say you put that on like it's a job. Your title would probably be owner, co-owner, whatever. And then, I mean, you can just list it as like you're the business owner and these are the things that your organization does, whether it's, it really depends on like, what do you want to talk about? Because that probably involves hiring. If you have staff, you have hiring, training, doing following government regulations. If you probably do some, even if you're the only person or there's only, you and a partner or someone, marketing, communication with whether it's investors or clients. So there's probably a lot of things, and you would need, one of the hard things there would be figuring out like maybe what to limit it to. So one of the things that I do want to say is you can look up, let's see, there's a resource called Own It Online, and this has a whole bunch of information on over 900 different occupations where you can see, I'm going to look up education, guidance, career counselors, and advisors. And so you can come here and see different job titles. You can see some of the tasks that they tend to do, the technology that they tend to use, knowledge, skills, abilities, and then the work activities. And so you can either think about the jobs that you've had or look at the jobs that you want and really get a sense for, okay, how are they talking about these experiences? How are they talking about this knowledge? What technology do people in this industry or this field tend to use? And make sure that you're not copying and pasting it, but make sure that if there's some of these things are on there and they're really important, your resume should kind of talk about that. I know that we had some other things at the beginning that we were going to talk about, but for the sake of time, I mean, I can stay on a little bit longer if we need to, but I know that some of you probably need to get going. Does anyone have any other questions or something you want to share? And Janine, Ivy, I'm not sure, or Colette, I see you there too. I'm not sure how much longer you all can stay on.
I'm here until you are done.
Okay, so I'm here. If anyone does anyone have any other questions or a resource you want to share? Yeah, whatever, Colette. Did she already leave? Yes, yes, Louise, you wear many hats. And I think one of the things we talked about before is like how to decide, and maybe making that one-page resume is super hard if you do have a lot of experience. Let's see. We have another, let's see. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you everyone for joining. And again, feel free, request an appointment. You can always email me at cmeeker@fiu.edu. If I don't respond right away, send me another email or ask Ivy, Colette, Janine to get back to me. So thank you everyone for sharing. Thank you, Janine. Yes, so my email's in the chat. And again, you all have access to that Google Doc as well. I'll keep it there for like a week.
I'm also going to put in our Instagram for Campus Life, so make sure to follow that so you can get involved with more of our awesome events that are happening. Also, I will put in the YouTube channel that this session will be on if you need to watch it later.
So yes, I have a question in the chat. Ariel, what is your major?
Political science.
Okay, so yeah, you can, let me go into the PowerPoint real quick. And Janine, thank you so much for that. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, Ariel, and I will share my screen right now so you can see where I'm at. Okay, so we have the drop-in program. So we don't have like an email, and I'm gonna do that because we have so many appointments that we use a calendaring system. So you can come into the virtual drop-in hours. It's Tuesdays 10 to 12, Thursdays 3 to 5, and I think the first Wednesday of the month from 5 to 7, and someone there will be able to review your resume. You can also request an appointment, go through Handshake. You'll see the Career Center and then appointments. Now you said I'm sorry, what was your major again? I know you're in
Political
green,
science,
right?
like
I'm sorry.
pre-law,
It's
political
what?
science.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you actually have, um, oops. Oh, I forgot that I was still in the PowerPoint. You actually have, Ariel, your career coach. Do you know who Millie Buendia is?
No.
So she works with undergrads for the Green School. And so I am going, let's see, Millie is your career coach. And let me look up her email real quick. So she's going, if you want her to review the resume, she will. She'll probably ask you to schedule an appointment, but I want to give you her email just in case.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I'd be happy to do it as well, but she's the one who's like embedded in those majors. Let's see. So Abe Buendia, FIU.edu. So her name is actually Anna Millie, but she goes by Millie. So I just put it in the chat. But again, if you go into Handshake, you'll be able to see her availability for appointments. But again, you can also go into the drop-in program. I don't know, Millie probably won't be in there. We'll have different people who rotate. The career coach for psychology. Okay, so we have case is so big that there's a bunch of us. So there's not one specifically for psychology, but for example, Sage, I'll see anyone in case. I have Roman, Adriana, gosh, a couple of other advisors. I can't remember who all sees psychology. Now, for those of you who are here, since you're interested in it, I can log into Handshake right now and show you. Would you all, those who are here, do you want me to show you how to request an appointment?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to go into Handshake right now, and then I'm going to log into my student account or alum account. Switch to student accounts. Okay. Share screen. So can you all see my screen again?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. Right now, I want to get out of there. So this is one of the slides that I showed you. I'm going to go to Career Center. And then I'm going to go to appointments. So I have a lot of appointments because these are with other people. These are a bunch of appointments with students. So I'm going to go to schedule a new appointment. And then I have two options available for me. I can see someone at BBC, and I think right now I'm the only one listed there, but I can also schedule an appointment with someone at MMC. So now I'm going to choose a type of appointment. So maybe I just want, I don't know, general career coaching. And so it's going to tell me that these are two dates. So you can see no one's available today or tomorrow. But there's availability on Thursday, the 28th. Oh, says no more slots are available. Let me look for Friday. So if I go to Friday, January 29th, Ashley Risotto, Darren Gregory, Adriana Medina, Alicia Booker, all of us, I think, see general. So we can all see Roman, all of us can see, I think, any major. And so I'm going to click on, and you can see the times over here, 9:30 to 10, 10 to 10:30. And so it's really up to you. Now, if you were to change this, So right now you're at MMC, the category that you're requesting is MMC, the type of appointment is general, the staff member has no preference, and the appointment medium is no preference. Just note, we're only doing, I think, virtual right now. But if you change this to BBC, you're going to see it automatically changed it to BBC. Let's see. I'm pretty sure. Okay, John, my colleague John has some appointments available. I don't have anything available, I think, until like February 24th. That's just because I just got booked up a long time ago. I think I was the only one who had availability during the break. So, does anyone have any questions about Handshake or any other questions that you want me to go over? Oh, you know what, before I end that, I will let you know, this can be, you're going to need to spend some time. Like, what do you want help with? How did you hear about us? You can include up to 3 additional career coaching services that you like, but honestly, within a half hour, we probably won't be able to talk about much. So like, literally, I I just try to like do as little information as possible before next page, and then see what it's requiring. But that's how you can request an appointment, and you can play around with you know, the location and the type of appointment and stuff like that. So yeah, any other questions? Any other thing you want to take a look at, spend more time on?
Caroline,
Yes.
the mock interview, what is that more about? Can you explain that?
Sure. So, well, and it's going to depend on who you meet with. In general, a mock interview would be like a one-on-one. So, Martha, if you requested an appointment with me for a mock interview, I'll be like, great. And so since we haven't met before, we're going to have a conversation at first about, okay, so what kind of job is it? Do you already have an interview scheduled and you want to practice for it? Or is it just, you just want to practice how to interview? And so for me, I'll usually give people, you know, we have different options. I'm like, do you just want to talk about interviews? Because we can just do interview prep, and here are common interview questions that you might get asked. Or we can sit down for an interview, a practice interview, and I can ask you an interview question and you can answer it, and then we can talk about it. How did you feel? What do you think? And then I can give my feedback, and then we can go to the next interview question, and I can ask you the next question, and then you can answer. Or we can pretend as if we've never met each other, and then I might even pronounce your name wrong and see, like, how do you respond to that? Do you correct me? And then we can just go through as if it's a practice interview, and then I give you feedback at the end. Now, we have had people, every once in a while, we'll do a mock panel interview. And so we'll have someone who's like, hey, like, Carolyn, I have a group or a panel interview. I think there's going to be like 3 people interviewing me. Can I do a mock panel interview? And so I'll see if I can get a colleague or 2. And then all of us will interview that person, that one person. So it's really just a chance to practice some interview questions and get feedback. And so sometimes it's been just super casual. Sometimes it's like, hey, you are dressing up. And then I'm really going to take notes on, like, you know, your hair, like, do you move around? Do you move your hands a lot and stuff like that? Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. It was a long response, but yes, you're welcome.
That was a great response.
Okay.
It really
Any
helped.
Sorry?
I said it really helped because I really didn't understand what that meant.
Good. So yes, please feel free, schedule. Like, I have some people that I'll work with, and they're like, we'll end up meeting like maybe especially when we're on campus, or like every other week for 15 minutes. And it's like, great, how's your job search going? Or especially if people are applying for grad school. Okay, what grad schools are you looking at? What exams do they require? Do you have your letters of rec lined up? So whatever you need, like, Martha, what is your major?
Engineering.
Okay, so do you know Joseph Jutan?
No.
Okay, so you can meet with any career coach from Career and Talent Development who meets with general students, like, not for, like SEPA or anything like that. But you have a career coach, Joseph Jutan. He's super cool, and he is focused on engineering students. So you can, if you logged into Handshake, you would have seen different accesses. Like you would have been able to, how when I logged in under my account, I could see MMC and BBC appointments. You would actually have engineering appointments.
And his name would be in that.
Joseph Jutan.
Okay. And I make an appointment with him.
Yeah. Do you want me to log into Handshake under your account and walk you through?
I remember how you were able to do the advising appointment, but I'm assuming instead of all those names that you showed, it would show his name.
Well, yes, but you'll